How you going, guys? Welcome to the fourth Provider podcast, coming at you live from Tairua on the Coromandel. And I'm very lucky this afternoon to be talking to one of New Zealand's pre-imminent preventative health experts. Welcome, Professor Grant Schofield.
G'day, Carl. Thanks for having me, and hi from Tairua, everyone. Hope everyone's well out there.
Okay, so taking things a little bit left field. I assure you it still does relate to fishing, but we're going to be exploring something that both Grant and myself are very passionate about, and that's men's wellbeing. So I'll be sharing a little bit of my journey. Grant's going to be putting some of his vast array of knowledge into the mix. So I'm just going to give you, and we're also going to just be talking loosely about how passionate we both are about our hometown as well of Tairua. So both feel we're very fortunate to live in a paradise like this. So a bit about Grant first, and I'm just going to read from some of my notes, which Grant's got a very extensive background and CV. So Grant is Director of the Human Potential Centre at the AUT Millennium School of Sport and Recreation. His research and teaching interests are in wellbeing and chronic disease prevention, especially reducing the risk of eventual mortality and morbidity from obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. Grant's a co-author and bestseller of Low Carb, Healthy Fat Bible, What the Fat. He's a passionate long-distance runner and triathlete. He's also founder of PreKure, a social enterprise focused on inspiring the medical profession to be more focused on preventative health. And I'm stoked to say that I've been taking part in for the last 6 months in Grant's health coaching course, which I've found absolutely fascinating. Very interesting to be studying again after many, many years. So welcome, Grant. So we both call Tairua home. What led you to sort of be based largely here, and what do you love about Tairua and the local community?
Well, actually, I was originally trying to buy a place in Wangata for some reason, because I never know about Tairua. And then I was just driving around one day, and I was like, I wonder what's over here. And I was like, I remember people talking about that place. And then that was back from when I was a youngster, really only had a reputation from the George Grey Hotel, and sort of people sort of running amok there, which got knocked down ages ago. And started looking around, and I was like, this is a really nice place. Oh, this is a pretty cool community. I started coming to stay here a bit, and rented sort of a place of 4 or 5 times in a row, and then tried to buy a place that fell through, tried to buy another place that fell through, tried to buy a section that fell through, tried to buy another place that fell through, and then eventually finally got a place, which was awesome. And I guess what I love most about Tairua, besides people don't know New Zealand's Coromandel, its nature is stunningly beautiful. So that's one thing. It's pristine. So you look at what you think of an estuary or a harbour where you're out fishing, and it's just crystal clear, and there's just fish swimming around and all that sort of stuff. Still, that's not. You go out to Auckland, for example, and you go out off Takapuna Beach or Milford Beach or something, and it's not that. In fact, the water tastes funny. So that's one thing. Actually, at the same time, I was studying, had this large wellbeing survey called the Sovereign Wellbeing Index, which measured how well people around the world were, including New Zealand. And what turned out to be one of the major determinants is knowing people around you in your local community. And you ask questions like, I know my neighbours, people in my community help one another. I go for a walk and I meet and know people. And surprisingly, New Zealand is really bad at that. Like, we had data from 23 other European countries, and we were like at number 22 next to Belarus or someplace. And that was interesting. I thought, well, we don't do that very well. And then when you looked at the data, it wasn't New Zealand, it was Auckland, followed by Christchurch, followed by Wellington, where probably 1 in 10 to 1 in 5 people actually had any relationship with their local community. And that's the exact opposite from here. Like, literally, I'd go for a walk, might see 5 cars in the first couple of k's of walking, half of which will just give you a toot because they know you.
The old one finger.
And then you'll run into a couple of people that and you'll stop and have a conversation with them. and you'll carry on from there. And that, I think, is unusual in bigger towns. And even if they don't know you, they'll still say hi.
Yeah.
Which, if you go for I like to go for a run or a walk or that sort of thing, people just don't talk to you. Yeah. So that's what I like about it. It's that people actually.
I think that's what I love about Tairua. Yeah, just knowing people by name and many conversations during the day, just from impromptu conversations, just from running into people. I think occasionally it's nice to get up into the big spoke and just be anonymous for a while, but it's not that. It's interesting though when you look at people's well-being. That's like one of the biggest determinants is knowing people in your community, and when they answer those questions. Like the countries that do the best on that, like Scandinavian ones, it's like 90% of people are saying, yeah, I know my neighbours, I've got a relationship with people, or I run into people, my community helps one another. We're down at 10 to 20%. Yeah, it's pretty poor. Yeah, and that whole thing about, you've got people in the community that are looking out for your back. Yeah. So you spend, you split your time between here and your commitments in Auckland. Tell us a little bit about what your professional life entails.
Well, mainly my job is a professor of public health, and you sort of use words that sound stupid, I think, like morbidity and mortality, which is like, what does that even mean? It's sort of, it'd be great. I think most people aspire to have on balance, would you rather die at 85 or 55? And the answer is probably 85. I don't know anyone who's thinking opposite to that.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So that's mortality. So we want to live a long time. But if you're living a long time, then you might as well be having a good time. And a good time actually means having the wherewithal to go about and do the things that you want to do. Yeah. So that's what morbidity is. So if you're high in morbidity, you're alive a while, but most of that time spent being sick. So that's really what public health for me is around, sort of seeing if we can have a long, healthy life. Yeah. And you go, well, what determines that? And it's like, well, what we eat, how fit we are, and how much we sleep already, and how well we can get on with other people. So it's those sort of four things. The social connections, the eat, sleep, and move are really what I study. And so I'd have to do research and win research contracts to study that, and then publish scientific papers. That's what a professor does. And then I also, obviously, I've got uni students, so I've got lectures and classes and thesis students, and that's what a professor does.
Yeah.
Sort of a little bit fun. On the other hand, it's sort of like, I think the thing I miss at the end of the day is like having a cheap, like having a fish in my hand, or there's the house I built.
Saying something you built,
yeah. So
tangible.
So often you don't get that because it's a lot of those. I thought it was a good idea. So there's that, and then part of my time spent with PreKure, which is just felt medicine has lost its way completely, with drugs being the first treatment to fix some sort of symptom-based illness is like not what medicine should be about. Like we should be extensively trying to be well and then improve on that, not wait till you get sick and try and give you some pills to fix it, which were never the cause of the problem. Not having enough pills wasn't the cause of the problem.
Yeah.
So trying to move medicine and a different way of getting the health message across is probably the other part of what I do.
Yeah. I think that's the first time I came across you, Grant, and PreKure in particular was a podcast you did with one of our local legends, Coxie.
Yeah.
is a good mate, and we're just looking out over Tairua Beach here at the moment, and Coxie loved nothing better than to park his boat up there and be chasing some kingies, or to go for a dive for some crays, or to catch a wave in the surf out there. And I guess that's the whole point of this discussion today as well, as specifically about male and men's wellbeing, is in the fishing community. I just feel we're that close to just being awesome, healthy males, just by the fact we're out early, we're seeing the sunrise, we're inherently connected to nature, we're out there catching healthy protein, good fat, by going out and gathering a feed ourselves. We're connecting with other guys. There's just maybe a few things here and there we're potentially missing. And I guess that's some of the things I was very keen to delve into today.
Yeah.
I personally know lots of clients, mates in the fishing community that have left well before their time. Like, in today's society, what are we getting wrong? Like humans, if you go back, hundreds of generations, didn't suffer from chronic illness like we do today. Where are we getting it wrong?
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? And I sort of noticed this mostly because I had done all this work in the remote Pacific for the World Health Organization. And the cool thing about that, actually from a fishing point of view, it's pretty cool as well. But what you see is people who are actually just extensively healthy and happy, even though they don't have anything that we have. I mean, the sad thing is they're aspiring to be like us, but there's no cancer, there's no heart disease, there's no diabetes, and there's by and large no poor mental health. And people get to their sort of mid-70s, which is about where you get to if you get through childhood. And in medicine, it's called an idiopathic death, but you're basically alive, you're fully functioning, and then over a couple of weeks you're not, and that's the end of it. So you haven't really died of anything other than just old age. And you've had a great, healthy, functional life the whole time you've been alive. And so then you go, well, gee, that looks quite different to what I see in New Zealand, which is 13 years of disability. Yeah, you can expect
so that's the morbidity.
Yeah, just the morbidity. And so you go, well, how are we so different than these people? And I reckon it's pretty simple, really. Like it's remember, these guys aren't going to the gym. They're not working out.
Yeah.
They're not going, should I need to set aside my specific time for exercise now?
Yeah.
They're just going about their daily living, which requires some physical effort, to be fair.
Yeah.
They're not reading food labels or buying this or buying that. Actually, the only food that's available is food that humans have evolved on, which is food that's low in human interference. It was just recently alive, swimming around, running around, flying around, growing something.
Yeah.
And they go to sleep when the sun goes down.
Yeah.
And they get up when it comes up. And that's it. Like, it's just that bloody simple. It's like, it's not very hard, except for our whole society drives us to a place which is the exact opposite of that. It's like most of the food I think Auckland Uni guys studied this last year, but it's like, I think about 2/3 of what we eat comes out of packets. So that doesn't even meet the basic definition of food. We're down an hour and a half on sleep from what we were 100 years ago, probably more from even further back. And most of us sit in cars to get places the whole day. I mean, actually, I sort of, when I'm up in Auckland, I'm going to work at AUT, I have to walk across this motorway overbridge thing, and I watch the traffic completely stalled, like not moving at all. I'm just looking at these poor bastards sitting in their cars going, and the saying always comes to my mind, the trouble of winning the rat race is at the end of the day you're still a rat. And so all these little rats are sitting in their cars. And I'm trying to work out, I'm just going, okay, I reckon there's about, I don't know, this is that professor's thing, guys. I'm sitting in the car walking across going, well, I reckon I can see about 1,000 cars at the moment. Yeah. Okay, there's probably about at least 1,000 people, probably, 1,200 people. Yeah. Each of them's wasting, at least half an hour, probably 3/4 of an hour going to their destination today to work. And traffic. Yeah. And that's time where cortisol's heightened and you're actually more stressed out than any other time of your day. And you can understand why that is. A small mistake can be quite bad for you. Yeah. And so you multiply all that out and you go, well, just today there's years of human life being needlessly wasted sitting on the stupid motorway, doing God knows what. Yeah. And I sort of look at that and go, that doesn't resemble anything that humans have done. Like you couldn't be further from nature, sitting in your car, cocooned, concrete all around you, stressing out because it's a stressful situation. Like when you study brainwave activity and brain chemistry, it's actually stressful. Yeah. You bang that on at the end of your day.
One thing I was keen to touch on is sort of intuition and gut instinct, and I've lived a bit of my life in that environment, and I always just felt in my gut. I was like, get me out of here. Like I grew up as a kid. I was very lucky. I grew up on the Coromandel over in Thames. We lived right next to a stream, and so weekends I'd just wander up the stream, right up into the mountains. Yeah, barefoot, boulder hopping, all the way up, all the way down. I was very lucky, to be able to go fishing out here on both sides of the peninsula as well. So I did what I thought I had to do, like career-wise. Went off to university, ended up working in office blocks in Wellington, Melbourne, Auckland, but that didn't last long. I was always there's just something in my gut that said this is not right. You got to get back to the Coromandel and do actually what you love. Live the life that I always thought was right as well, as catching your own food, living off the land as much as you can, and showcasing that to other people as well. Just showcasing to people that there is a better way of doing things.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trap though, isn't it? Because I do these, before COVID, I was doing quite a lot of this sort of work, and you'd go and do sort of health and wellbeing work in these companies, and the ones that want it the most are interesting because they're the two highest professions, right? Dentistry and law.
Yeah.
Now there may be happy dentists and happy lawyers, so that's your best, right? But by and large, those are the two most miserable professions. Yeah. But also the two highest earning ones. But you can see the trap they get into. Like, end up having to counsel people to say, how will I exit this high-paying job?
Yeah.
And it is a trap because the worst-case scenario, people have trouble sort of getting their grips around. It's like, well, if I were to change my life around to stop doing this and start doing this, then there's going to be trade-offs. I'll be inevitably, it comes down to trading money for what you want to do. Not, it's rare in those professions that those two things are completely aligned. I get paid well, and I get to do exactly what I love doing, and I'm comfortable with that. Yeah. Usually they're unaligned. It's like I earn loads of money, and that might give me the resources I need to do the thing that I really want to do. Yeah. And you go, well, I'm miserable doing this, but I'm happy doing this. Yeah. And you're sort of trading these things.
That's a trade-off.
Yeah, so how do you bring them closer and closer together?
A little bit of that's that trade-off between following your head and following your heart.
Yeah,
but
but is that even a bit of a logical fallacy, right? Because those things should be aligned, right? So the question is, one of the things I like, I do this. I get school kids to do it, like teenagers. There's this thing called the VIA strengths inventory, and it's just like a sort of questionnaire, and you go through and you go, what am I actually good at, and do I like doing? And it's, if you go through those things, and you go, well, the top 5 things I'm doing every day in my work, and I'm getting a chance to do them, then things are aligned, and that's great. But if you're actually going, no, that's not working. Like one time I had a job working for the Ministry of Education, and it's like none of my 5 sort of strengths, which have been curious, love of new learning, saying what I think, all this sort of stuff, are compatible with that job at all. It may be completely miserable. And when you realise that, you just go, that's not going to work for me. Yeah. And that's the number one thing I see, especially with guys. They're like, I know, but I've got to provide for this, I've got to provide for that. It's like, well, at the end of the day, there's no practice run here. You're not getting to do this again. Can we get a better alignment? Yeah. And I get it. Not everyone's going to give up their job, move to the Coromandel, and do what you do, which is living the dream, really. You're catching, you're going in there and doing tours, you're working with people on health, that's great. Yeah. But how can you make them more compatible? Yeah. And there's always going to be a trade of usually money. And then you go, well, can I live with that trade? And I think there's a lot of fear around people trying that. So that's what I'd like to see people do more. If you don't do anything else other than this, think about, ask people, ask men particularly, what would your ideal day look like? Yeah. And it's not work free. That's a sort of bullshit fantasy. It's like, but it would involve doing this and this and this and this. And it's like, well, how come I don't do that? Oh, well, I wouldn't be able to earn any money. Just rethink your priorities.
Yeah, I've always thought if you're doing what you love, the money will follow on.
Yeah, well, I've always thought that. I never actually planned to have any career at all. I've never done any career counselling or thought about what I might do when I grow up. It just sort of always seemed like a good idea, and I liked doing it, and it's worked out for me. But
yeah. I think one of the epiphanies doing your health coach course is been looking at human evolution. So the 98% of Homo sapiens existence were primarily being hunter-gatherers. So that pull, especially for lots of fishermen, that pull to get out on the water all the time and be in fresh air it's a natural one.
It's primal drive. Yeah. And it does satisfy something deep. I just wish I was better at it. I would have starved if it was.
So we're just going to talk about, you mentioned a few components of wellbeing. So diet, fitness, good sleep, mindset. Let's touch on a few of those. And I thought that one of the first ones we could talk about is quite often my downfall. It's fitness and movement. And again, when I was doing the course, I think there's a big epiphany for me. Like I've always thought that primal way of eating, and we'll touch on that later, it's just sat with me really well. But the more I delved into your course, that primal instinct in terms of moving, and one of the things that struck me is, as you said in there, is humans are the endurance athletes of the planet.
Yeah.
And that just went, wow, like there's nothing worse I hate than sitting in front of a computer all day.
Yeah.
And humans aren't actually, we're not geared for sitting down. We're supposed to move.
Yeah. So that was that sort of idea that if you thought about the sort of human environment, one, it's unstable, it was outdoors, and you're more or less in constant motion until you caught something. Then you just feasted on it, and then you weren't in motion for a few days, and you got going again. So that sort of natural cycle of that was one thing. But the second thing is sort of, if you look in human history, evolution, and then even some of the modern day hunter-gatherers, then the sort of original African savanna ones, I think, is what we are evolved from, and have pretty much identical genes to, is that we were doing what's called persistence hunting. So persistence hunting is a small group of you breaking off one sort of large stampeding animal from a group, and then just using your natural advantage, which is sweating through your whole skin, against their disadvantage, which is only cooling down through their tongue. And so you're really just calling that animal off and just getting into a bit of a state of heat exhaustion. That might go on for a few hours. And then when it's getting near collapse, you just go on and deal with it, and you've got your food. And so that requires a few things. And we need meat and the fat from animals, particularly because there's no way of fueling a brain that is this big compared to our body size. We've got a massive brain.
And that's where our brain grew in size as well, is that for the first time, once we worked out how to do that, we were feasting off the organ meats, the really nutrient dense part of the animal that before that the other animals were actually eating. And
if you're just scavenging, you're not going to get there. And so I mean, that's the reason why chimpanzees and gorillas have 400 cubic centimeters brain, and we've got a 1200 cubic centimeter brain. Is that there's just not enough food in a vegetarian jungle to sustain a bigger brain. And brains are highly energetic, and also therefore you need to be good at catching food, which we are, because there's obviously not much else going for us. Like we're not like compared to an animal, like we're pathetic really. Like no claws, no armor, not very fast sprinting, weak as anything. But we better have something, and we can endure in the heat extremely well compared to any other animal, and we're extremely good fat burners, so we can actually go without food for a reasonably long time. But to be a good fat burner, you've also got to be an extremely good fat storer. We're extremely good at storing fat compared to other animals. You try and get a chimpanzee fat, it's actually quite hard. They're just lean animals because they don't need to keep a supply of fat to keep their brain going, because their brain's not that big.
So how you're talking about we don't necessarily have to go to the gym to move. How should we be building more movement into our daily routines?
My scientific view, and I think it's well supported, and it's how I treat myself, is I sort of have what I do basically stretched into two things. One's just easy movement. Either you're working, you're doing some labouring, you're building, you're going for a long walk, it could be in the bush. For me, I've been lucky enough to be a runner my whole life, and it sort of suits my physiology. My knowledge, not everyone's got that history, so I just go out and do that. A bike ride, a swim, a kayak, anything like that. So it's just easy moving. and it's comfortable, you come back feeling invigorated. This is not stressful, right? It's just, and I generally do it without any food, because if you do it without food, then you're just burning more fat. And then occasionally, I'll go and do something, and this is synthetic, I admit it. It'd be better if it wasn't synthetic. I was just hauling large loads of stuff and chopping firewood and moving that around the place, but I don't. I'll just do something that's higher intensity explosive and is lifting heavy stuff. So a couple of times a week, I'll do 15 or 20 minutes of lifting some heavy weights, and or just like running up some stairs or something near the coast or beach or something, or Tairua is good for it. Let's just sprinting up those hills to the top of PreKure. Yeah, I just run as hard as I can for a minute, and then I stop, get my breath, run hard again for another minute. Like, don't do 5 of those, 6 of those to get up. So that's just like maximal intensity animal stuff. Obviously, there's a bit of a risk of injuring yourself if you're not very fit. And if you're not very fit because you've spent your life not being fit, it's still not a reason not to do it. It just means you have to take your time getting up to it. And just the other thing on the science of that that's worth thinking about, a good example is they followed, there's 2 groups of 50-year-olds actually, and they started following them. They're medically identical at age 50. One group was just exercising a bit more than the other, and they kept following them for the next 22 years. Like at the end of that 22 years, what are they, age 72? Well, 12% of the fit ones had died, and 35% of the unfit ones had died. So just, like if there was a medicine that had that difference in death rate, it would be frigging amazing. But it's not just that they die, because if you die, you probably won't care because you'd be dead. You're not thinking. But being alive, the fit ones had an extra 12 years over those 22 years of disability-free health. It's just like, if being fit, if being fit was medicine, which it is, this would be like the best medicine ever invented. Like, it just doesn't get being fit doesn't get its due course on medicine. And in fact, pisses me off because people see me out doing some exercise and they're like, "Oh, you're a fitness freak," and it's like, there's nothing freaky about it.
That's what we've always done.
It's like this is normal human stuff. I'm not, and it's quite good fun. At least it is for me. So
and I guess that's why so many people are pulled, drawn to being out there pig hunting and deer hunting and
pig hunting and deer hunting are like the best. In fact, that is just frigging hard, right? You're getting everything, right? So you get the endurance, plus you've got the lifting heavy stuff. I mean, anyone's ever tried lifting an animal out of the bush? My God, my hand goes off to the
and more and more I try and if I'm going out of the boat, I'll try as much as possible to throw my free dive here and there. You've been out fishing, you're not necessarily moving around that much on the boat while you're fishing, but jump in the water for an hour or two and fin away, and not to mention, your breathing and your breath holds, just come home just feeling that much more refreshed.
Bit of cold water as well. It's always good.
Cold water, you're a keen triathlete and runner. So I think I've done the odd triathlon, half Ironman and so on, but running was always my downfall. I love it, but I think it's a matter of finding what works for you as well. I always just love jumping in the pool. That's my favourite exercise.
Like if there's not something that you can do, you've got to find it, because it's like, otherwise you just have a short life. And you'll be less healthy where you're living. So find something. Like, surely everyone can find something.
I think it's what I've loved about as well, or a bit of a bigger bit of land that myself and my fiancée Tairua are slowly developing. But that whole thing of building, carrying building materials around, digging. I've been boxing up gardens, pulling up a whole lot of old pine out of the forest below us, lugging that up the hills, and you just notice how your fitness goes up, but upper body strength as well.
Totally. I need to. You're better. I know you're better at that than me, and I need to manufacture more activities that fall into. I have to come up and help you or something. But that's right. You did right. That's exactly how you should do it. So the opportunity to do manual work around a property is like pretty much as good as it gets. And the moment you go, I'll cut this up and lift these over there, or I'll just get a tractor and it's like I'll cut them up and lift it. You know, take twice as long, but you'll be 4 times more awesome.
Yeah, and especially if you're throwing gardening into that mix and you're growing some good healthy kai as well.
Correct.
Let's go. Which leads us on to so we talked about fitness, so diet, and I think the first time that it really hit home to me that food is medicine was 5 or 6 years ago. My dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So it wasn't a very nice part of our family's life, seeing dad suffering like that. But he ended up going to a private specialist at the time who was a little bit controversial, and one of their key things in the toolbox was a ketogenic diet. Yeah. So cutting out all carbs, cutting out all the sugar, and moving to large amounts of healthy fat. That's my first when I first heard of a ketogenic diet. I think one thing that struck home to me is, if this is what a specialist is saying someone should do when they're terminally ill, to fight cancer in your body, wouldn't it naturally make sense to follow some sort of diet like that before you get sick? Like, how have I not heard of a diet like this up until now? Like, shouldn't we be eating like that just to boost our immunity and keeping our bodies in check? And I think another thing I heard last year is your mind and body know how to heal yourselves. So that just struck me as like, wow, you've actually got to give it the right environment to your mind and your body, the right environment to do that, to heal itself. Since then, I came across Pete Evans and his paleo way diet and tried that, a 10-week diet going back to our paleo roots, which is really easy as a fisherman. Like, you're pretty much eating what you're catching out there on the ocean, and some good healthy red meat and bird meat thrown in as well. Good protein, healthy fat, and some veggies thrown in our garden, some nuts and berries and things like that as well. And that's pretty much the gist of it. I think I lost close to 20 kilos in 10 weeks. Wow. Felt mentally sharp. I wake up in the mornings and my body's been thrown around a bit by those long slogs back from the Aldermans and 25 knots, and my hips and my elbows and things feel a little bit. But once I was on that diet, I was like, wow, I've got absolutely no joint pain. So that whole thing about, that's personal experience of food being medicine, and it actually makes so much sense. Like, if you're looking after your joints like that, surely you're going to be at less risk of having to have hip replacements, knee replacements. I know lots of people that have been down that route, and not to mention diabetes, heart disease. Yeah. What's your take on diet, Grant? And I know you've written a lot about low carb, healthy fat. What's the science behind it?
Oh yeah, so I reckon it's interesting. It's one of the most interesting things in the world, if you ask me. Like, I mean, you got to remember, up until 10,000 years ago, no one really there wasn't a manual on eating. People were pretty healthy. Yeah. Then we sort of got into the agricultural revolution, which I think is an interesting thing, that someone came up with a clever idea. It's like, hey, why are we hunting all these things? We could grow some of this stuff and keep some of these animals as livestock. Yeah. Which sounds like a great idea. And actually, it turns out to be a good idea for only one reason. But actually turns out to be a really dumb idea for lots of other reasons. So humans, at that point, their life expectancy halved. Yeah. Mainly because we lived in communities with get contagious disease now, so that sort of halved our life expectancy. It's also humans shrunk between 5 and 7 inches, and their brain shrunk from 1,500 cubic centimeters to 1,200. So humans sort of shrunk in stretch of nutrient deprivation, because the food that we were farming wasn't as high quality, especially the grains, or corn or rice, depending on where in the world you were doing it. And the last couple of hundred years we've unshrunk, so we're back to the original height, but we haven't unshrunk our brains yet. Those are still at 1,200. cubic centimetres. And the one thing that was in favour of this way of eating was that we could get kids off breastfeeding and put them on soft foods now because they were available, and just have more kids. And just a small change in birth rate makes the human population go exponential, which is what it's done. And then in the last 100 years, we've invented food processing with factories and refrigeration and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And so now we've got a food environment that looks nothing like what we've done. And then, of all perverse things, the Americans won World War II. Because they won World War II, they sort of start owning the science. And this one guy, Ansel Keys, decides that it's actually dietary fat, especially animal fats, that are the root of all evil. And that sort of takes scientific hold, even though it was never proven. And this led to this diet heart hypothesis and the food pyramid, which is extensively what the food supply in a prison or a hospital or any sort of government sanctioned thing goes on, which is reduced dietary fat, especially saturated fat, butters out, get rid of the meat and the animals because that's all bad. And scientifically, it just doesn't add up at all. In fact, it's completely the opposite to that. And so you go, actually, what would happen if you didn't? If anyone's been to hospital recently, either to visit someone or they've been in there, and you get a meal in the hospital, I think you'll agree it's just bizarre. There's your orange juice, there's your low-fat yogurt, there's your piece of toast, and there's the margarine and the jam to stick on it. It's just like refined, processed carbohydrates, basically. Yeah. But it's low in fat. And the trouble is that this raises your blood sugar and it raises a hormone called insulin. When those go up, those being high are the root cause of what we call metabolic diseases. And the metabolic diseases all have something in common. It's cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, Alzheimer's and dementia. Those are metabolic diseases, those are the things that will get almost all of us. Yeah. And they're diet related. And they're diet related from eating what the government told you to. It's just sad and pathetic. Yeah. And then you come out and have some other template. You go, well, hang on, why don't we just go for whole unprocessed food, stuff that was recently alive, like the paleo type diet, yeah. Or you go for more of a keto one, which is going, look, every time you have these starchy, wheaty, sugary carbohydrates, your blood sugar goes up and you feel shit and you put on weight. What if you just ate less of those and ate more fat, yeah. Which is the keto type approach? And the answer is when you do trials on those, or you just do it on yourself, like scientifically you do it in trials, or just practically
what feels good for you.
Yeah, then virtually everyone responds well. Yeah. And then you go back to the government and go, hey, why don't we change the policy on this? And it's like, oh, no. And so I've just been, nutrition wasn't my original field, it was fitness. Yeah. But I've spent the best part of the last decade and a half in nutrition now. Oh, it's just a complete fight. It's just unbelievable. It's like, at least in the academic world of fitness, you have a bit of discussion about everyone's sort of friendly. Nutrition, no one's friendly. There's sort of pitched camps, and the latest one is the sort of plant-based stuff. Yeah. It's like, can't eat any animal products. Those are the cause of all evil, and it's just like there's no scientific basis for that. Processed food is the problem.
I was listening to an interesting talk last night, basically saying that the key to well-being is animal products and the sinewy part of animal products, all the gelatinous part of animals, from your bone broths, and that's something we can do as fishermen as well.
Well, no, I reckon as fishermen, so all you guys out there, I had a decent sized couple of kingies a while back. Yeah. We're like, I'll just chuck them down the beach, get rid of them. And it's like, hang on, like, look at them. This is like 2/3 of the animal. Yeah. And so I chuck the gas ring out and boil them up over several hours. Yeah.
Make a nice stock.
Oh, it's bloody great. And then I actually just like chowders, and it makes a great base for that. And then you start using the stock, and that's right. We'll chuck away the most
nutrient dense part of the.
And the same goes for beef and lamb and all that. Yeah. We chuck away half the animal. Yeah. Probably with the most nutrients. So that's sort of nose to tail type eating. So it's a bit of a hassle, but geez.
One of the things I love doing with kingies is, so you've got your kingy frame, and each knuckle you can get a knife in there and break the knuckle off. Yeah. Break each of those knuckles off. Yeah. You got a sort of shape like that. Put a bit of marinade on them. Yeah. And chuck them on the Weber. Yeah. And you suckle the fat and
Oh, is it right out of the bone?
Caramelized.
Yeah,
all around the bone. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's what you see people, you've been to Samoa, I've spent quite a bit of time in Vanuatu, and that's what the locals there do. They make sure they eat every little.
Yeah, well, why would you waste decent food? I mean, it's just unethical. Point of view. So we could do better there.
Yeah. So what's your favourite seafood, Grant?
King is for sure, kingfish. Yeah. That and a sort of. It's not true. You gave me some tuna the other day. It was very good, but I think it's a rare fish, right? So you're not really getting that. But around here, it's just getting kingies and kingies and that sort of raw coconut type, milk type stuff. Ceviche would be my favourite. Because I just have that for every meal,
How good was that bluefin? The fat, like the part close to the skin. Once you dice it up, it's like having olive oil or coconut oil all over your hands. It's just so
it's such a fatty fish. It's awesome. In fact, you gave me that, and I was going to eat it, save it, and all that sort of stuff, and then I just ate it straight away. A whole lot.
So I guess one thing with me as well is over time and through these experiences, I've got to know a lot of the knowledge behind it. Putting it into practice sometimes is hard. Sometimes you're like, when you're on a 10-week program, it's fairly easy. You're going to stick to it. Sometimes easy to get sidetracked by that bag of chips or that big loaf of crusty white bread. What are some of the things you've discovered about the difference between that knowledge and putting into practice? And
that's the $1 million thing, isn't it? It's like it's all very well known that if you don't do it, then you've got a problem. But on the other hand, I think people should know that, even me, I live this is my whole life. This is what I'm, interested in. I start at night reading this stuff, not because it's work, because it's like I find it just bloody interesting. I still, have some beers and so I'm partial to salt and vinegar chips. So just tell you, it's like there's nothing good about them. They're done on industrial cooking oil. They're shitty, refined, crappy carbohydrates, and you leave a packet that's not going to rot for 1,000 years. It's shit food. So I really like it though, so I have that sometimes.
So when we're talking about carbohydrates as well, so we've got carbohydrates are not biologically necessary.
No, so you don't need it.
So your body really only needs protein and fat.
Yeah, because every cell in your body needs essential fatty acids and essential amino acids. You only get that from the diet. That's why fish is so good, because the actual essential fatty acids are those omega-3 and omega-6 ones. Especially the omega-3s, which are fish have got. So back onto the behavioural stuff. So I think the problem is that you're a human. You will fail. But I think that's just worth acknowledging up front. It's like I'm doing this and I'll be real good, and then I won't be. And so my thing is to it's what I do 90% of the time that counts. I would say that that's actually a fair thing. So 90% of the time I'm pretty good with my diet, make a good effort, enjoy that food. 10% of the time I'm absolutely wretched, and I'm that's fine. You'll keep that balance right. If you're metabolically sick, like my dad's got prostate cancer, it was metastasized everywhere a few years ago. He's actually got on top of it, made through his diet. He acknowledges that his shit diet and too much booze caused it in the first place. So he has to be a bit better than 90-20, 90-10. But for me, 90-10, it's just like, my favourite week, actually, this is what I did in what the fast book is like, just fit it in with my life, be pretty strict on Monday and Tuesday, and in fact eat a bit less, in fact miss breakfast and lunch, just have dinner, keep that healthy. So I try real hard those 2 days, sort of busy doing stuff, because I've tried hard on Monday and Tuesday. I generally keep that going Wednesday, Thursday. By Friday, Saturday, the wheels had completely fallen off, and who knows what was going to happen. And then on Sunday, I was getting ready for Monday again, and so that was just that behaviourally works well for me. Like I can stay fit, healthy, all the metabolic things work well for me. Doing that. And so I think just people need to acknowledge that. What happens though is everyone goes, we're super strict, and then they're not, and then they're completely off the horse, and then they're 100% shit. There's no point to that, is there? Like you're real good, then you weren't. So can we just be a little bit more coherent around
moderation.
Well, it's a sort of funny word what moderation is, but it's like you're a human, you're going to fail. Acknowledge that frailty, and then just get on with it.
Yeah. I guess it's a lot easier in an environment like this as well. Where you're active all the time.
Yeah. And
gathering healthy food
and random people will catch a whole bunch of fish and drop them around or something. So that's another good thing to do with your fish, guys, is give some of them away.
Yeah.
Like the main beneficiary is you, really.
Yeah.
Of that.
So under diet comes alcohol. So I guess that's a pertinent topic in the fishing world. We all do like a few beers at the end of the day, and that's probably a little bit of a trigger for me sometimes, is actually going fishing. That's something that has been synonymous with fishing over the years, and it's a matter of sort of cutting that habit out for me as well, because beer's very high carb. What's your advice around alcohol and diet?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, from a public health point of view, the basic public health facts of the matter are that alcohol does way more harm than it does good in society. Like, it's just like, that's not under debate. Once you sort of go, well, you get this many road crashes, this many guys acting like a bunch of knobs, we get, causing all sorts of problems because of it. Blah blah blah. The harm outweighs the good. But I do think there is actually some useful from this. Like, for me, sitting down with a couple of beers and talking about how awesome we were, or how even if we're reinventing the past, that's actually bloody good fun. And there's benefit to that. But let's not kid ourselves at some sort of health tonic. Like, it's not. It's just not. I mean, for me, I think a trick to it is to go periods of enjoying some of the usefulness of alcohol, and then actually having entire periods where you're not drinking at all. Like, just not at all. Okay, so that's just like I did several months. Like, I'll go for a month, and then I'll go for a few more. And then I might come off that. I'm in a bit of an off period at the moment, so it's like you can get low carb beers, by the way. Not that they're a health tonic either, but and just think that's having the ability,
having the spells off, completely off it
for long periods of time. It's like, because otherwise you're kidding yourself. And I see a lot of people going, "Oh, no, I can handle it." No. It's like, and it's like you're going through a box a week, or more, and you tell me that that's okay. So, I think to ask what roles, there's a lot of myths around alcohol as well. It's like, I'm funnier, I enjoy myself more. It's like, no, your frontal lobe's just shut down. You think you're funny, you're just more stupid. So there's a sort of biological fact versus the sort of thing I'd like to hear about this. I think that's the thing in alcohol. But there's a place for it, and it's good fun. And it's a good time sitting around and having a couple of beers and talking about things we shouldn't. That's not a bad thing. It's not always that way.
I know anyone who knows me personally will know that I like from time to time like a few drinks. But that's definitely part of my journey, is just learning how to moderate that and go spells completely without it. Like on the paleo diet I just cut it out for 10 weeks, and mental clarity and I think the big thing is when I don't drink, my productivity just goes through the roof. Like, it just chopped through so much. I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning, using, which for me is the best part of the day to get work done and just smashing stuff out.
The thing that was most convincing for me is that, like, it's this one study that they did with uni students. They had them learn this computer coding task for a day. So they started like this level of knowledge, and they got up to some other level of knowledge, whatever. And they randomised them to a couple of different groups. One group just gets 8 hours of sleep for the next week. The other group gets the same amount of sleep, but on the first night, just before they go to bed, they have 2 shots of vodka. And you go, well, what's the interesting thing about that? Well, alcohol turns off your dream sleep, REM sleep. And REM sleep's where you're basically moving the postal notes around the brain and putting them in the right places and making a connection. So it's learning and memory, solving problems. And when they tested them again on that, what they knew about that computer coding after a week, the kids who just didn't have the drink, just did the coding and went to sleep for each night, had actually improved after a week. The kids who had their vodka on the first night, they're down 50%.
Wow.
It's like that's the thing that I think is so interesting. It's just like you want to turn off your ability to dream and have a good night's sleep. Well, how you do it is you have alcohol. That's what it does. And this is also why if there's a pregnant woman in your life, we recommend no alcohol, because it turns off the baby's dream sleep, and babies are dreaming. They're asleep about 20 hours a day in the womb, and they're dreaming about half of that. And so you feel a baby moving around, and people, oh, you're getting ready to come out. No, they're dreaming, but they haven't yet got the apparatus that paralyzes them, because obviously when you're an adult or a live human out of the womb, you can't be dreaming and moving, because that would end badly. You're paralyzed, but they haven't developed that yet. So so if pregnant mum starts drinking, just turns the baby's dream sleep off, ruins their cognitive development. So yeah, that's alcohol. Yeah, we better stop.
Yeah, that is the other thing I notice if I knock the alcohol off for even just one or two, like the first couple of nights, you just notice your sleep is markedly better. Like you sleep right through, you don't wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, you have to get back to sleep, and you wake up just feeling absolutely refreshed.
Well, I think the other thing is we're getting a bit older. Our prostate's enlarging. You have a diuretic and some extra fluid. You're going to get up another once or twice. Need to go to the toilet. That's going to break up your sleep on top of not dreaming properly. Yeah.
And so on that note, sleep. And so one of the things I'm keen to have a quick chat about is sleep, and also mental health. Mental health's becoming a much talked about and topic in New Zealand society, especially for men. And it's been great to see that become more mainstream for guys to put their hand up and say, not cool, not okay. I've been through my own journey with mental health, 2 reasonably bad periods in my life, one of which I ended up in hospital. And interesting what you're talking about around what you served in hospitals. I got to see that firsthand. 3 weeks in hospital, and I've always known that food is medicine, and I'm getting served for breakfast a couple of pieces of toast with some margarine, just going, what?
Well, with mental health, you should be having some fresh fish full of omega-3s, anti-inflammatory in the brain, and that's about the best you can do.
I was just lucky that my mum, brought me in big bags of nuts. And, I just think that's so good for you as well. What are some of the things we can be doing to look after
sleep?
Our mental health and our mental well-being?
Well, why don't we deal with the sleep, because I think it's important.
I think they come hand in hand.
In my opinion, if you're not sleeping properly, your mental health will suffer to a degree.
And I'd say with both of those situations, sleep had a large part of it. Like if you're not sleeping.
No, and then of course what you're doing if you're not sleeping, and then you're getting stressed out about not sleeping, you're waking up at night and you're ruminating, which is the actual pattern of depression and anxiety, right? You're worrying about either stuff that has happened or stuff that could happen. Neither of which you have any control over, because it's not, you can't go back in time and you can't go forward in time. So you're sitting there stressing about you're not sleeping, and then the biology of being well is impaired because the brain's not wiring itself properly. I just reckon with sleep, there's a couple of things that's worth thinking about. So if you go back 100 years and you asked any New Zealander the question about, do you get 6 hours or more sleep a night? Well, everyone did, because only 2% of people have less than 6 hours. Now that's a third of us. So there's an hour and a half less sleep that we get on average, and some more than others. That's just like in 100 years. And then no one used to say, I don't wake up feeling refreshed. Now 50% of New Zealanders wake up saying, I don't wake up feeling refreshed. So it's a staggering change, right? And you go, geez, what's happened? Well, I reckon the main thing that's happened is artificial light, and not get so normally what would happen, right, is you're out in nature, out on the water during the day, you're getting sunlight or natural light, which is high in blue wavelength light, suppresses this hormone melatonin down. And then as it gets to the end of the day, it gets dusky or something, that light goes away and this melatonin, the sleep hormone, rises up, you feel sleepy, go to bed, wake up. So that's camping. right? You're just in a natural rhythm. That's when you go to bed and get up, and it's just generally feel pretty good. Of course, what happens? You're sitting in an office with screens and light. Then you go home and you see the same screens at night, and the brain's just getting no signal to go to sleep whatsoever. So it's utterly impaired, right? And it didn't used to be quite so bad until we invented white LED lights. Because the yellow incandescent bulb isn't that actually high in blue wavelength light, so it is different from the sun. You might not have been going out during the day into the sun, but now you've got a phone, a computer screen, an iPad, and the white LED lights are all high in blue wavelength light, actually higher than the sun in proportion. So you're giving the brain no signal to go to sleep. And it's actually most profound with kids. So it takes their melatonin from picking up quite high and zeroes it. So you put a kid in front of an iPad just before bed, they have zero melatonin, and their sleep quality and quantity is impaired. For some reason, we have less melatonin as we get older, and it doesn't zero up for us, but it still affects our quality and quantity. So I think that's the main thing. That's the beauty of outside, right? Get outside. Your normal biology will work. Stay inside. Good luck with that.
And don't go scrolling through Facebook before you go to bed.
Well, that'll ruin your day for various other reasons, which probably we're not going to get into now. But so yeah, I think mental health and sleep are, and then the food part and the other thing to remember with mental health and sleep is that if you start to think about what we do now, but especially depression and anxiety as being inflammatory problems in the brain's inflamed.
So that comes back to diet.
Well, diet's a part, but also sleep, surprisingly, especially going to bed not real late, because it's not dream sleep, it's deep sleep. And deep sleep, there's a thing called the lymphatic system, which is a sort of clear fluid that moves around the inside of the brain. And in that deep sleep, it goes up about threefold in terms of its flow. And that's removing waste and inflammation. So you'll always go to bed with a slightly inflamed brain from just being alive and the amount of energy expended during the day. And the early sleep in the night clears that up. Now, if you go to bed at midnight, you just miss out on that. You never get it back, right? So that's why going to bed at some reasonable hour, like 10 o'clock, is actually a better thing, because that sleep happens between 10 and midnight. You won't, dreaming happens later in the night, and you just won't recover it. So that's an important thing. I guess the other thing with mental health for guys is just, I think there's two things. First of all, as you were saying, acknowledge there's an issue if you've got one, and talk to someone about it. But it's also normal. Who expects to go through their life and not feel shit from time to time? It's a bullshit thing about where's the wife? Everyone goes, you'll be happily married, and all sorts of stuff. That's just a complete myth. It's probably, it might not be a myth, but it's like even awesome relationships in a great life are like this. It's just up and down, up and down.
That's part of life. I remember sitting there. It's so important to talk to people, and I was lucky to have some good, just real good mates and family around me, but I also employed a psychotherapist for a few sessions. And remember, one thing that really sticks in my head is him looking me in the eye and saying, "Carl, you realise anyone who's been through, like you've just been through, a bit of stuff happening in my life, would have ended up exactly the same."
Well, if you didn't, if you weren't unhappy, what's wrong with you? So I think that's the other thing. It's like a normal, a good life is up and down. Like that's living, right? And this is
we're all here to experience. The whole.
Well, that's what annoys me
of what life's got to offer.
That's what annoys me so much about lotto tickets. There was a big lotto one the other night, and everyone's in for their thing. I just refuse to do it on every psychological level. It's like what you're aspiring to is a life where you don't have any of the ups and downs. That's no way to live. And actually, in fact, when you study people who win lotto, the only ones who are better off than when they started are ones who give most of it away. People who don't do that actually generally worse off. And you go, okay, I'll be in that study, I'll prove you wrong. But that's the way it rolls, man.
I think one of the things I found about the last lockdown as well is just how how good I felt mentally. And I think it was just, you could be who you were. You didn't feel like you had to be chasing your tail or keeping up with what everyone else is doing.
Yeah,
or
correct.
You just and to me, that's one of the tools I've had in my toolbox around mental health. When you start feeling a little bit of anxiety, it's actually just, it's okay just to go and take some time out and just sit on the deck.
Totally.
Sit on the deck and look at the ocean and look at the birds flying around. And
and also, at some point you might not come right.
Yeah.
And you might need to go and seek some more professional help and get some insights.
Yeah.
Which is probably the main thing, I think.
Yeah.
And that's all right too. It doesn't make you anything. It just makes you getting some extra help.
Yeah. And all those other things we've talked about. So diet.
Yeah. Well, that's not even a topic in mental health, unbelievably. Like our government did a whole review of mental health and didn't discuss sleep, fitness, or diet, like the three main things you can do.
Yeah. What role do you think antidepressants have to play? Like, from my experience, they get dished out pretty willy-nilly. It seems to be the first thing that doctors they've got in their toolbox.
Yeah, so it could. When you do scientific trials with antidepressants, it's quite interesting. Like they're actually quite effective, but they're no more effective than placebos, which are also quite effective.
Yeah.
So, like, if they're playing that role, like if getting you 30% better straight away, it's a bloody good role.
Yeah,
like that works.
Yeah.
The fact that they're no better than placebo doesn't make them useless. Makes them bloody effective.
Yeah.
So I think if they've got a short-term role, especially in severe stuff, to actually help bring you back to a point where you're good to go again, like I'm all for that. Long-term use, you just can't see the point.
Yeah.
Like it's not the answer. And also, the answer, the basic mechanism isn't even a mechanism. Like this sort of serotonin deficiency view of these SSRI antidepressants is complete nonsense. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
So you've got a medication based on something that actually doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
For what's essentially a disorder of inflammation. So but they're effective, man. Compared to not doing anything. So I guess if you know that, they might not be more effective.
So before we wrap up, I was just going to have a chat about where obviously COVID's reared its ugly head in New Zealand again. With Auckland's just been put into level 3 lockdown. We're in level 2 down here in Tairua.
Yeah.
One of the last things in light of that I was going to talk about is immunity, and what other than some of the things we've talked about already, what are other things we can do as humans to boost our immunity? And is that something that has been talked about enough at the moment?
Oh, no, we'll start at the end. So it's not talked about at all. It's a mind-blowingly frustrating topic for me. It's like you can spend billions developing a vaccine, might take 4 to 10 years. Might get there quicker, who knows. Vaccines probably don't improve the chances of the people who are most unwell in the first place. That's the whole problem, right? So, men over 65, for example, respond really poorly to the flu vaccine. They don't produce antibodies, and that's why they're more susceptible to dying from the flu in the first place. But what's interesting with that group of men is you can get them on a healthy diet, particularly ones that are full of these probiotics, sort of live fermented stuff, and you get up from 30% of people being affected to 70%. So like diet makes a massive difference to your response to other treatments. COVID, like your chances of getting hospitalized and chances of dying are just massively accelerated as soon as you've got a chronic condition, particularly diabetes. You've got a 5 times bigger chance of going into the ICU. And going into the ICU with COVID is not a good thing. So, if you're pretty healthy, COVID offers pretty much a trivial chance of something bad happening to you. If you're not healthy, it's not trivial. It's actually a serious disease, and that's the thing I think we're taking hold of. It's like this is a disease that will kill quite a lot of people, and we know one of the only things that we actually have any control of at the moment is our own health. and we're investing nothing. It's not a topic. Put your mask on. Okay, well, that's good. That might stop people getting it, but being healthy is what's going to do it. In particular, keeping your blood sugar under control. So the easiest way to keep your blood sugar under control is stop eating refined, ultra-processed crap food, and just start to live off the land again. If you thought you're at risk of COVID and you're not in the trivial category, or you've got people around you who aren't, then that's what you do. It just drives me nuts. Yeah. Just my world is that we will. This is a sort of typical week. You'll try and get some funding to do some work on diabetes and diet or this sort of stuff, and you'll get your grant back in, or you'll go, oh, it's going to cost us $200 a person to put them through this diet program. You're like, oh no, there's no money in the health system for that sort of thing. And the single stay in the ICU is like 14 grand. So it just drives me completely bonkers. Like that's what we deal with in the health system. So I'll just stop ranting about it. I just if one thing ruins my sleep, it's that, frankly.
Yeah, and that's what I love about what you do, Grant. It's all focused around, making sure people don't drive off the cliff instead of being the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff.
Yeah, it just makes no sense, does it?
Yeah. And on that note, I just want to put in a bit of a plug for something we're doing at Provider, and that's our men's wellbeing retreat. So something we started back in March, and so it's a complete experience. Come down to where we live in Tairua, spend some time out on the ocean, hunter gathering.
Get up when it gets light, go to bed when it gets dark.
Get up, yeah. Follow the natural rhythms, breathe in some fresh air, plenty of time to take a chill pill. You'll learn lots of good, healthy ways to cook up your seafood and other good, healthy food. I'll be doing all the cooking and sharing some of my recipes. We'll get out there, move, enjoy, catch some big fish, and generally I think one of the great things of the retreats we've done so far is just having some good time to reflect as guys about our own journeys, and just been really good experiences, just connecting with guys, talking about men's wellbeing, what we've all been through, and having that sort of creating that network as well of guys to call on in the future. And
that's cool. Liking those retreats. Yeah.
And it's been great doing the health coach course, just to put a bit of build up that knowledge base and behind it, so we can share that with the guys coming down doing the retreats as well.
Yep.
Thanks for your chat, Grant.
That's good. Good to see you again.
Yeah, we'll have to get you out on the boat for a fish at some stage.
Yeah, I wish I had more skill. I need to develop more skill. I eventually catch a kingfish and I pull it up and I'm like, oh, this is just an absolute beauty. And they're like, oh no, they have to be 80 centimetres. Yours is 76. I'm like, what?
They all fight hard regardless of how big they are. And I think that's the thing I love about Tairua, is we're actually sitting in that Grant's house overlooking Tairua Beach, and we're only probably a few hundred metres from one of my favourite spots. Yeah, you don't have to go far down here.
Well, actually, Lisa and I met last year. Went up on a Northland fishing trip. Went for a week, hoovering around all over the place, trying to catches nothing. Yeah, comes back here, goes up the first day, catches 10 kingies right up in front of Palmery Surf Club. It's like, what was I doing?
Yeah, no, I only have to look around us. So I've got crayfish there, scallops there, snapper, kingies there. Yeah, doesn't get much better. If you'd like to come down and experience a bit of what Tairua's got to offer, get in touch and send me a message and we'll get you out there. Cheers, Grant. Thanks for the talk.
Yep. Catch you later.
Take it easy, guys. Look after yourselves.